What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into another draft edition of the Barking Brown Show. I'm your host, Jacob at Roachism13. For these festivities, I am joined by listen, guys, check it out. I've met Mike in person. We had a heck of a good time watching the Browns beat the Panthers, but I needed some help breaking down offensive linemen. There's only one guy, well, two guys, and one of them just a little bit busy right now, and that I want to talk to more. And that's Mike over at the Lineman Lounge. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show. Evo could not make it. He works night shift out in Arizona, so he's unable to be here. I do have some notes from him, though, but man, I love talking line play, which is weird because it's not the exciting part of football.
Yeah.
But it's the most important part of football outside of quarterback play. I coach offensive line for youth football. Like I roomed with linemen when I was in college. I was a running back, so I had to get to know those guys. I love talking line play, so I'm pumped about today.
Dude, we're going to jump right into it just for a second. But before that, we are brought to you, as always, by our friends over at Homage Apparel. This is my favorite Homage shirt that I have. Oh, we're both okay. Yes.
Yeah. I came with it today.
I love it. I like this one. It's like very simple, the old school brownie, the elf. I really enjoy that. So I got a link down in the description below for Homage. They'll set you guys up, get you real good. So you might want to go over there and check that out. I'll say this. You say it's not the most exciting aspect of football. When I watch offensive line play, some offensive line play is some of the most juiced I get sometimes. Like I love watching Joel Bitonio or Wyatt Teller just pulling and getting a shot on a linebacker. And you're like, oh. So I will admit, while people do think it might not be the most exciting thing, I do think it can get you good and fired up when you see the right offensive line play. So we're going to talk about centers. I've got three prospects. I know you've got three. I know you got some notes from Evo as well. So we'll jump in through that. So let's start it off, man. Who's the first guy you got on your list?
Okay, so I'm going to go in kind of a little reverse order. I'm going to start with a guy I like, I don't love, and we'll kind of go up from there. But when we were doing this, I went back and I looked how many centers were drafted last year. It was only 6. That is the lowest number of players drafted for a position other than fullback, kicker, punter, and long snapper. So centers, you're not going to get a lot of them to go. And when you asked me about this, it's like, yeah, man, I'd love to do that. And we were going to talk about the Browns. That makes this even tougher because I tried to apply the guardrails that Andrew Berry is going to use to these center prospects, and there are not very many of them.
It was not an easy task.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do have a guy who is an outside the guardrails guy. But since we're talking about the Browns, this is the Barking Brown Show. I'm going to start with a guy who is in the guardrails, who I like, I don't love. Luke Wypler at Ohio State, the guy that everybody's, very, very familiar with. He is, he's this guy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He does really good things on tape. He does some not great things on tape, but nothing really pops about Luke Wypler for me. Yeah. He does everything okay, nothing special, but I do have some notes from, going back and looking at some stuff. So for me, he does do a really good job with his ability to mirror defenders in the pass game. As a center, you're going to be going up against guys that are typically going to be faster, stronger than you. Interior offensive line is typically where your least athletic guys are. So being able to kind of move and mirror those guys is really, really important. Any pressure up the middle instantly ruins any play, run or pass. So I like his ability to mirror. He will get stalemates in his pass pro. Has the ability. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. So it's decent size. You can get to the second level. I do love his hand placement. When you're an offensive lineman, you have got to understand how to use your hands just as much as a defensive lineman, because their hand fighting is going to be a constant part of your life. My son plays center. I have a punching bag in the basement so he can start using his hands and figure out how to throw these punches. So I like his ability to do that. But a lot of times he will get off balance. He will reach.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't play through his hips enough. He gets out over his chest. I don't love that. And it has the ability to create some issues. But numbers don't lie. 1 sack given up over 2 years as a full-time starter. Those are good numbers. And you were talking about it. Line play cannot be the most exciting, but every once in a while, you get a really cool thing. You get to see it. 95% of the time, if a lineman is being brought up, it is not a good thing. We do not want to hear about linemen. The other 5% are those guys that are pulling and absolutely killing somebody, like a Wyatt Teller on a down block with a pull.
Yeah,
that stuff is exciting, but most of the time we don't want to hear their names. So not getting your name called for not giving up sacks is a good thing. He's kind of a mad guy for me. I could take him. I do not draft this guy, though, if I'm looking for any production immediately. I think this is a guy that's going to take another 2 years in the league to get a little bigger, get a little stronger, and then works himself into a rotation. Maybe he can become a starter, but I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say the strength and conditioning programs at an NFL level could be exactly how he gets there. I'm going to stay in the Big Ten with my first guy. And this guy's got just a phenomenal mullet. I was just going to start there with Wisconsin's Joe Tippmann. I like him a lot. 6'6", 317. He's what when you think of a Wisconsin lineman, you think of Joe Tippmann with the locks and and the business in the front, the party in the back. I was looking at that this is my favorite stat about him. In his senior year in high school, he was credited with 102 pancake blocks.
Yeah. There's not a chance in blue hell that I am gonna line up in front of him and be like, okay, he's gonna down block right here. I know it's coming, and he's going to murder me.
He's gonna do exactly what he wants. He's got a lot of like flexibility upside and positionally. I think he can slide out to either guard position and play kind of that way. Height, weight, athleticism. He kind of checks all of the boxes. And then that's what I was going to say. It's his leverage. I've got my notes over here and I'm not reading them properly. Sometimes he plays with poor leverage. And at 6'6", you get that a lot. The 6'6", 6'7" lineman, that's the thing. That's the thing with even DeJuan Jones, who I think is really fantastic, the right tackle from Ohio State. He's just this massive human, and sometimes he plays with a high pad level, and I think that's what Tippmann's problem is. When I look at Tippmann, I don't see a mover in the run game, and all I mean by that is I don't see him necessarily always driving people. He definitely can, and we talk about his high school days, but he's one of those guys that he's just got a really nice, strong, sturdy base, and he just kind of is. He's not going to push the defender out of the way, but the defender's not going to get by him necessarily in a run game. And that's kind of, and I know my terminology for this sort of stuff isn't what it necessarily should be, the proper terms, but that's the way I look at it, is that he's going to complete his assignment. He might not do it at an exceptionally elite level, but he's probably a 3rd round pick. He's probably a 3rd or 4th round pick, somewhere in that range. So I think you could, if they did not feel good about Nick Harris, and then that comp pick comes up and they take Tippmann, I think Tippmann could start as a rookie, because I think he's got all that experience, and he's really smart. He understands. I think he's a better pass blocker than run blocker. I think he doesn't give up a whole bunch of pressure. Because he's not a mover. Exactly. So to speak, he's not driving people away. And I'm looking, I'm trying to see he's got nice lateral agility when it comes to the pass pro. And I think if you watch him try to pass off assignments or pick up assignments that are passed off to him, I think he does it really well, understands his role. So I don't think he's like a blow you away 1st round pick type of thing, but he could play this year and be okay, be pretty good. And in long term, I think he could be a pretty good prospect for the Browns. And if they don't feel comfortable, because I think Posick walks, And if they don't feel comfortable with Nick Harris coming back, then I think Tippmann's a guy on day 2, if he's staring you in the face, that you might pull the trigger, and I think it would be beneficial.
Yeah, so the second guy on my list is also Joe Tippmann, a guy that I like, uber athletic for the size that he is, 6'6", like 3. You said 17, 320, somewhere in that range. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, for being that size, he has great athleticism. And you were talking about terminology, so everybody has different terminology. Like if I want a guy out of a gap, I need you to dig him out. Like dig him out of his gap. That's the way I say it. He's not necessarily going to dig you out of a gap. He will down block you to death. But if you're set up on, something in 32 side and I got a guy in the 1 and I need that guy moved out of the A gap, I don't know that Tippmann is going to dig him out and really open up that lane. If you get a down block, maybe you could do some really cool traps and stuff like that. I like him there. His ability to pass block is pretty good. But one thing I did notice when I went back, turned on, it was hard finding all 22s of Wisconsin, by the way. God dang, it was hard to find all 22s. His feet don't necessarily match what his upper body is doing. His feet lag a little bit, which is weird considering how athletic that he is. Yeah. I think that with the right coaching scheme and the right guy, a lot of that is correctable. Oh, and it also will help his other problem that I saw. He's penalized too much. He has a huge frame, but sometimes doesn't trust that athleticism and will latch on rather than allowing that athleticism to carry. So I like Joe. I don't think he profiles as a center, though. We as Browns fans have been burned by tall centers in the past, and it is tough for me to say I want a 6'6" center. Now, with the amount of shotgun that the Browns could potentially be running with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, that may not be that big of an issue, but he is so large that I do worry about getting under center with a guy that is that big. Good prospect. I like his athleticism. He needs to get into the right coaching system. I mean, Bill Callahan is the best in the world. So getting him here would be great. And I think you could get him with a third, maybe a fourth, because I don't know that there's any guy, maybe one center in this draft that'll go first round. So I think a lot of these guys are going to fall second, third, fourth round, which is right where the Browns are going to be able to, go and pick this guy up. I like Tippmann. There are some things to work on technique wise, but he's got all of the skill. I mean, all of the physical traits that you want out of a lineman.
Yeah. I think it's I'm going to stick in the Big Ten. I'm going to stick in the Big Ten here. And I'm going to go, oh boy, we're going to try this. We're trying it one time.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I had to Google how to say this, and I'm still going to screw it up.
I think it's Olu Oluwatimi, I think is his last name. He's the Michigan center.
Olu Oluwatimi.
Olu Oluwatimi. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the only part I cannot say his first name, but Olu Oluwatimi is how you say his last name. That's the only part I remember.
That is what we're going with. All right. So smaller in terms of vertical, 6'3", 310. I don't know that that's much smaller in the grand scheme of things than what Tippmann is. He's really hyper competitive. Like he's just got a really good competitive nature. Another guy that's really experienced and has a really high football intelligence and IQ of an understanding of what he needs to do. He's would be most beneficial, I think, in a zone-oriented offense, like zone scheme in terms of blocking. There's some lower body power issues that I think worry you a little bit. Again, you're talking about digging people out of holes and moving people around. I don't know that he does that very well either. It's the leg drive, right? It's that set I have no problem with his pass pro at all. I love his pass pro, which again, as you're talking about more shotgun, more throwing the ball, more all of that. He would be probably pretty good in that system. I don't really know. He can move laterally. Like, okay, he can, like, I just don't think you would see a lot. You would see some changes. You wouldn't see a lot of centers pulling like you've seen with Posick and Treader and what they wanted to do with Nick Harris before he goes down, stuff like that. Because I just don't know that he moves. He just doesn't have the power in lateral quickness to put it together to be that sort of player. But again, like, he has good hand placement. He understands what his assignment is. His guy is not going to get through him easily, but he can be susceptible to some of the more athletic players because he lacks some of that lateral quickness. But like, dude's not giving up pressure or sacks. Like, he's when we're talking about that sort of thing, and that's where I think the Browns offense is going, and that's the trend you're going to see. And when you get to my third guy, I'm going to say it again, that he can't move very well laterally. But, I'm looking for these guys that just, the Browns may be looking for a starting center. Like, I don't know what they're going to do with that. I have absolutely no idea. But I'm looking at guys at fourth round value, third round value. That's where I put him as well. And he's a Big Ten lineman. Like, he can pull. I just don't like the leg drive. I don't like the lack of dominance in the run game. But as the Browns kind of shift, I'm like, hey, this guy can keep my quarterback clean, and that's what I'm mainly looking for.
Okay, so there's another guy that I got on my list. This is the one guy outside of the guardrails that I was like, I really, really like this guy. And if we're gonna break the guardrails and this guy slides the third or fourth round, I think the Browns should absolutely jump on this. Now, that depends on what happens with the guys you talked about, Nick Harris and Pochich. I think the best option for the Browns is going to be to bring Pochich back on a 2 to 3 year deal with void years and bring Nick Harris back off the injury, let them battle it out, and we'll see the way it shakes out. And I think Pochich has said he kind of wants to come back, but I don't know if the money's going to be right. I don't know if what they're going to offer is going to be enough for him, because he's probably looking in the $2.5 to $4 million a year range at this point. I mean, he played really well while he was in last year. So if we're going to look for another guy, Olu Oluwatimi is the guy that I think should be the target. So he does a great job mirroring in the pass pro, creates stalemates. Now, I did see on a couple of looks and went back to the Ohio State game, which was annoying as all hell. But he does have a little bit of ability to dig a guy out of that A gap if you absolutely need it. But I agree that is not his strong suit. Yep. And you brought up the zone scheme. I think an inside zone scheme is absolutely perfect for this guy. Now, the Browns are more of an outside zone scheme. We'll see if that continues to be the trend with Deshaun getting, all the snaps this year. If they stick with an outside zone out of the shotgun, it's going to be a little tougher to run. So there might be a transition to a little bit more of an inside zone, and I think he's a great fit there. Does get a little over his chest, got a little bit on the holding penalties, but like, this guy to me looks like the most complete of these mid-round guys. Mm-hmm. There are some other guys a little higher up that I'll talk about that Evo is absolutely in love with, and he is a Vikings fan, and they will have an opportunity to pick this guy. We will not, but Olu Oluwatimi for me is the guy in that third, fourth round that if we are going to go out and get a center, that's the guy I want. I think he'll fit in very, very nicely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was unfair for me to talk about like he didn't have any power, but so I'm glad you did kind of touch on there. Like, he can, yeah, absolutely.
He can, but it's not necessarily his strength.
And I'm a little bit of a hater because of that Ohio State hate.
That God, turning that back on is like, oh man.
And I knew I had to when I was sitting down to watch him, because I can remember, and that's like one thing when I go to scout some of these guys is I try to think, of players that I've either watched play against Ohio State or just play in big games in general. Mm-hmm. And I remember just thinking to myself, and that offensive line just whooped us. So let me go watch. Let me go watch their. Let me go watch Michigan center like that. I didn't know his name or anything like that necessarily when I first sat down to watch him. I was like, let me go watch him and see what's going on. I'm like, oh yeah, he did. He had himself a game. This last guy, he actually, for me, my last guy is played at left guard this year for Notre Dame, and that's Jarrett Patterson. I really like Patterson. Again, this might be a guy that goes way too early for the Browns. I've seen some situations in some mocks where he is there in that third round comp pick range where the Browns are around the 98. I don't know if he will be realistically. I think he's much higher ranked depending on which you want to look at, whatever one ranking boards you're looking at. He goes up and down, but so he plays left guard this year after playing a couple years at center for Notre Dame. I think he was a better center. That's not a knock on him as a left guard. That's just I think he was a better center, and I think part of that is he can't move. He can't move laterally. When he gets in space, he whiffs. And that's, I mean, let me get his size, 6'4", 307. He just looks kind of stiff. He can't really climb to the second level. Guys can dip around him or he'll whiff in open space. But when he's got you right in front of him, he's mean. He's got probably one of the more technically sound players on the interior, offensively speaking, understands his hand placement, understands leverage, understands how to sustain his blocks. He does all of those things you like, but you're potentially worried about his ability to pull in a zone scheme. But that's why I think he's better as a center than he was as a.
Uh-oh. Jacob, come back. Baby, come back.
Did we lose?
You sound like a robot right now.
Oh no.
There you are.
Are we back? Are we
looks like you look good. Okay. I was just serenading your fans with a little musical tune.
This happened to me last night too. It's like nobody's up. My internet can't be bad at 10:30 at night. This is ridiculous.
Uh-oh. As we say that.
You know, it did this to me the other day where it went out like 5 times. Are we still 3?
Yeah, you're good. All right, go ahead. I'm just counting how many times because you said 5 times the other night.
We're at 4.
All right, there we go. I think we got you.
4. No, we don't.
Nope.
We're not. So dude doesn't move great laterally, but he's really technically sound. I just don't even know. I just don't know.
Hey man, don't worry. I completely understand. We use the same platform that you guys use over at Network 216. And we've had some issues for sure. Evo's been getting slammed with just random internet issues. So
Patterson, technically sound player. I don't think he can move. Browns. Gracious. You know, this is what we're going to do until this decides to work. You go ahead and give Evo's notes so that I stop talking until my internet's good.
Okay. So before I get on to Evo stuff, I do have one more guy. So I had 3 guys that were in the guardrails and 1 outside the guardrails with Olu Oluwatimi. My other guy who's inside the guardrails, who I really want to like just because he's supposed to be really, really good, but has had ups and downs, and especially playing in a tough SEC, is Ricky Stromberg. So I love this guy's size. I love his ability in the run game to finish off his blocks is fantastic, but he only does that on the first level. He struggles getting up to the second level, just like I forgot his name, the guy you were talking about. Yep, Patterson. He's just not a fluid athlete getting up to the second level, which if you're talking about his own scheme, that's something that you really need to have because, I mean, you're doubling, you're passing guys off. That's the entire system when you're talking about a zone scheme. Yeah, I mean, if you want to run a gap or a power scheme, Ricky Stromberg's going to be great for you. And I think we'll actually see more teams kind of start in that direction just because of the success that was had throughout the NFL this year in those gap and power schemes, because all defenses are starting to get lighter. They want linebackers who run sideline to sideline. Same thing with, defensive linemen. They're getting lighter. So if you can run a gap or a power scheme and you can get these big guys like a Ricky Stromberg, you can absolutely decimate a team. So I do like his ability there. For me, the thing that I really loved when I was able to find some good tape on this guy is his initial punch is really, really good. And his ability to work with his offhand. If he's moving left, that right hand is still working the entire time. He's able to punch backside, allow a guard to get underneath a defender. That is really, really important. A lot of people just like, okay, so I'm going this direction. That's where all my focus is. That's not the way offensive line is played. That is an entire unit that must move like a choreographed dance, and the ability to work with that offhand and push people and help your other guys out is huge. It's one thing that I preach when I'm talking to my young linemen, is being able to use that offhand in the opposite direction. So I love his ability there. And the only thing that maybe worries me is speed guys. Speed guys on Ricky Stroman are going to have some success, but if you're getting this guy in the right system, I'm thinking like a Tennessee with a Derrick Henry, running it down people's throats, he's going to be a great fit. I don't think the fit is necessarily there for the Browns, but I like this guy as a prospect. We'll see how he grades out at the next level, because I would expect this guy will get an opportunity to come into camp and compete for a starting job depending on where he goes.
I like it. Yeah.
You appear to be just crystal clear. You look beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I will say one more thing about Jaret Patterson. He's a good football player, man. Like, I just think he's got the power and the technique, and he just, if you don't ask him to move a lot, to pull a lot, I think he can climb to the second level, but he can't pull. Just don't put him in space. Just don't put the guy in space. That's what I was trying to say when I rudely had to be cut off about 1,500 times. Honorable mention before Evo's notes, Alex Forsyth from Oregon. I like Forsyth a lot. Now, there is the complete opposite of what Jaret Patterson is, and that is Forsyth is in a similar zone blocking scheme to what the Browns like. Not quite as strong, but he can do those athletic things and he can move around a little bit. But
he's a little lighter, right? I want to say he's like 295.
I think so. Let me pull it. Well, they've got him listed at 305, but I don't think he was 305.
He looks light. I mean, but everybody in that Oregon offensive line is a little lighter because the way they run their offense. Like, you got to be.
Oh yeah, they ask him to just he's running more than some running backs. I mean, they've got him moving around like he's carrying the ball 30 times, but like, he's, in terms of athleticism and consistency, Alex Forsyth's a lot of fun, and I think he's a day 3. If they're like 5th, 6th, 7th, I don't know where he falls, because like you said, that's interesting that only 6 centers went last year. I didn't even realize that, and we took one of them. Well, yeah. I don't know if they called Dawson Deaton a center, or if they called him a guard.
I think they called him an interior offensive lineman, which means we don't know what position this guy's freaking
We're not
playing.
sure, but you're going to be one of those. You're going to be one of those guys. But like, I think if you're like looking and you're like, we feel good about Nick Harris. If you let Posick walk and you go, we feel good about Nick Harris, which I did going into last year, but we feel good about him. We'll take another guy. Forsyth, I think, just like kind of fits the system. So I just wanted to throw his name out there real quick.
All right. I mean, I have not watched enough to give an honest assessment. I do know that he, well, at least he looks a little lighter. Maybe he's just a little more lean and able to be a little more cut instead of those, some of those big hog mollies we get up there, the 320s and 330s, but like an Avila at a TCU, who was just a mountain of a man.
Dude, I'm not even sure we're the same race. Like, I'm like, that dude's an alien. He's like, we see him at his side. So I will give the floor to Evo's notes.
All right. So the guy this guy's the best center in the draft. Evo has every right to crush over this guy. And I apologize to Evo if I'm giving away too much. We have a show coming up a couple weeks from now. We're going to go over our draft crushes, the guys that we really like. One of his big guys is John Michael Schmitz.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you can't love this guy. So over the last few years, we haven't seen a ton of centers go early. 2 guys in the last 3 years who've been first rounders. You get a couple of second rounders, but you don't have to take a guy super early to get a really good guy. Creed Humphreys is the gold standard of what you want out of a center. Goes in the second round. God, I just forgot his name. Lynn something, went to the Ravens.
Tyler Lindenbaum.
Yeah, Tyler Lindenbaum. So he was fantastic. Everything looked good on tape at college. He was up and down this year, but you don't have to take a guy super early. But this is a guy that I think can and probably will go in the first round based on the value that he can provide a team like a Vikings. They have a great Garrett Bradbury, but I don't think anybody's happy with him. So that is Evo's big crush. Loves the way he moves, and his physical presence is impressive.
Yeah, he's nasty. he's one of those guys where you're just like, is he an athlete? Yeah. Is he really strong? Yeah. Does he understand what he's supposed to do? Yeah. He checks all those boxes. And what is his? Yeah, 320 pounds. He's 6'3", 320, and the dude just moves. It's just like majestic. John Michael Schmitz, like, if for some reason he starts tumbling, like, you gotta go and make that like move if you're a team like Minnesota. Like, I love it because I think he's as close to a can't miss prospect in this draft.
Well, and the guys that typically go in the draft at the center position, they all stick. It's one of the positions in the draft that you can feel really good about that pick. It's not flashy, it's not sexy, but you're gonna get a pretty solid football player typically when you're drafting a center in the draft. Like it's just the way it is. Like we see so many tackles that we just miss on, or tackles that we're like, oh, okay, well maybe he transitions to guard. There are still guys that are playing tackle that should be at guard from this last draft. But I don't want to get too far into the woods on that. But when you go out and you get a center and you get a guy like this that can anchor your offensive line, because the center position is so important. Obviously, the quarterback is going to be making checks. He's going to be making protection calls, but the center is the guy that's responsible for making sure everybody is on the same page. This guy is smart. He is big. He's physical. He does great in pass pro, gets to the second level. Schmitz is everything that you want. And a lot of the other notes that Evo has here, he likes Oli, just like we talked about. Scruggs, another guy he likes. And then Tippmann and Stromberg, he does like, but does not project them as centers. Think they are more guard type.
I can definitely see it. And that's the thing, though. When I look at the Browns, is like I'm before the internet cut out. Like Chris Hubbard, like in 2020, he played left tackle, right guard. And it's stuff like it. And I don't think they're a playoff team without Chris Hubbard. Like because of he has to make starts at right guard when Teller goes down early in the year, and it lets Teller get right because he was good enough in Teller's place. He does the same for Conklin. He starts week 2 for Conklin because he gets banged up in the season opener, so they don't play him on Thursday Night Football against the Bengals. And he goes out there and does that. Jed has a little bit of some injuries there towards the end of the year. He plays left tackle, and he plays it at such a high level that like it helped them win, I think, some early games. And so having those guys that can go inside, outside, I say it all the time with defensive linemen that can go D tackle, like I love Alex Wright because he can play in the defensive interior. If you can play guard and center, like, because you've seen it across the league. Like if you don't got a guy that can snap, like there can be some major issues once you get to the tail end of the show. So, or tail end of the game and season. That's the word, is season. All right. So Mike, I really appreciate you coming out here. It's late. It's Friday night. Before we jump off here real quick, just make sure everybody knows where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are on Twitter. You guys can see at Lineman Lounge. We are Facebook. We got a huge following on Facebook. We got a lot of olds that like the show. Okay. So Facebook group, we can be listened to on any podcast platform. If you find a podcast platform that we are not on, please tell me so I can get us registered on there. Instagram, TikTok, I run those, and I'm not necessarily the greatest TikToker. But there is some content on there every once in a while. But our main thing, we go live on YouTube, simulcast, Facebook, Twitter for the show at Lineman Lounge. And yeah, man, I'm very, very happy to be here, and I appreciate this. Hopefully we could do some more collab stuff, and we'll talk some more linemen, because I've got some questions when we get to left tackle, because that is going to be a point of contention with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, we had a conversation about that last night on the show, so we can, So we appreciate you guys for joining us this week. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe, give a thumbs up real quick. We appreciate you so much. We'll be back. Nick and I will be back on Tuesday. We'll have another draft show next week. I'm not really sure. Might be another mock draft. I'm not sure where we're going. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about here, and what I think is going to be a really fun off season. So I always say it every week, but the most valuable thing you can give somebody is some of your time. So I appreciate you guys giving some of yours to us. We will see you guys next time. And as always, go Browns.
Go.